It's time for the whole 9 yards. I'm Ralph Ventre, and I'm back for week 3. 7 games on the docket, including 2 against Ivy League members, another 2 games against CAA members. We have a big show. Let's get started with the opening drive. Duquesne's season-opening 3-game road trip will come to a close this Saturday in Dayton, taking on a Pioneer Football League member for the 2nd consecutive week. The Dukes will look to become the 2nd NEC team to defeat Dayton this year. Of course, Robert Morris took care of business against the Flyers back in week 1. Duquesne's offense jumped back on track in the week 2 win over Valpo, putting 45 points on the board. First-year starting quarterback Tommy Stewart with 3 touchdown passes and a TD rush. Meanwhile, sophomore running back A.J. Hines, 10 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns for the Dukes. They'll try to replicate that success against one of the PFL's best, the Dayton Flyers. Central Connecticut will also be in the state of Ohio for its Week 3 matchup. It's not getting any easier for the Blue Devils either. CCSU, which opened at Syracuse, dropped a heartbreaker at home to Patriot League power Fordham last week. The Blue Devils jumped out to a 17-0 lead over the Rams before succumbing 38-31 on a late last-minute defensive touchdown. Now the Blue Devils have the task of facing the 2016 national runner-up, Youngstown State. They took ACC member Pitt to overtime in week 1 before blanking NEC member Robert Morris in week 2. As it did with last week's opponent in Fordham, CCSU again faces a potent rushing attack. Youngstown State averaged 5 yards per carry in its week 2 win over Robert Morris. Speaking of Robert Morris, the Colonials put their 1-1 record on the line at home against Southern Conference member Virginia Military Institute. The VMI Cadets bring an 0-2 record into Moon Township. After a 62-0 loss to Air Force, VMI dropped its home opener, giving up 20 points in the 4th quarter, falling 27-20 to a D2 team in week 2. VMI has yet to score a touchdown from the red zone this season. That bodes well for Robert Morris's defense. The Colonials have employed a bit of a bend but don't break mentality. In 9 trips inside Robert Morris's 20, opponents have come away with only 4 touchdowns. The stout RMU defense should be a key factor in Saturday's matchup. You can watch it live on NEC Front Row. Taking a look at the 2 NEC versus Ivy League matchups on the Week 3 docket. First, it's a battle of the boroughs in New York City as Wagner makes the short trip from Staten Island to uptown Manhattan to face the Columbia Lions. The Seahawks, who are in the midst of a 3-game road trip, will look to bounce back after last week's loss in the NEC opener at St. Francis U. It's the 3rd year in a row that these 2 New York City rivals will meet. Columbia has won the first 2 meetings, including a late 15-13 victory on Grimes Hill in 2016. This game, which serves as Columbia's season opener, will air live on Sportsnet New York and the Ivy League Network. Kickoff is 1 p.m. The other NEC versus Ivy League game will be a battle for Ocean State bragging rights. Bryant will make the trip from Smithfield down to Providence to face Brown for the 4th time ever. Brown has won 2 of the first 3 meetings between these 2 sides. The Bulldogs had Brown on the ropes up 21-0 in last year's meeting before dropping a 35-27 decision. Adding another wrinkle to this in-state rivalry game is the fact that Bryant's first-year head coach, James Perry, is a Brown alumnus. Perry, the Bears' starting quarterback at the time, led his alma mater to the 1999 Ivy League championship. He threw for over 3,200 passing yards that season en route to winning the 1999 Ivy League Offensive Player of the Year honor. This Saturday, Perry would like to see Price Wilson and the Bulldogs party like it's 1999. Wilson, in his first year as the Bulldogs starting quarterback, ranks 4th overall amongst FCS leaders in passing yards, but Bryant has struggled to protect the football through its first 2 games. The Bulldogs have committed 13 turnovers and have a negative 11 turnover margin. They'll look to turn that number around Saturday at Brown, live on the Ivy League Network. We have 2 more matchups to touch on in this week's opening drive. Both of the matchups feature CAA opponents. First up, Sacred Heart is 2-0 for the 5th consecutive season. If they want to achieve the 3-0 start, it means that Mark Nofri's Pioneers will have to beat CAA member Stony Brook on the road for the 2nd consecutive season. It certainly won't be an easy task for the Pios out on Long Island, but Coach Nofri's team seems to have found a recipe for success in the season's first 2 games. Run the ball effectively and stop the run effectively. Sacred Heart's rushing defense, allowing just 58 total yards over the first 2 games, that ranks 5th in all of FCS. Meanwhile, on the offensive side, Sacred Heart is gaining 5.7 yards per carry with 9 rushing touchdowns in the season's first 2 weeks. Let's see if that will again be the recipe for success when Sacred Heart visits Stony Brook on Saturday evening. And finally, it's the defending NEC champion Red Flash hosting the Towson Tigers of the CAA. This one has potential to be a statement game of sorts for SFU. For the 2nd week in a row, St. Francis will also have the revenge factor on its side. The Red Flash jumped out to a 28-10 lead over Towson at Johnny Unitas Stadium last year before a furious second-half rally lifted the Tigers to a dramatic 35-28 victory. As St. Francis hopes to return the favor this year in Loretto, the Flash will look for continued improvement from its passing game and first-year starting quarterback Bear Fenimore. Fenimore is averaging an NEC high 9.5 yards per pass attempt through his first 2 SFU starts. His 6 touchdowns also lead the league, and he has yet to be intercepted. Meanwhile, on the other side, Towson, which is coming off a 63-17 loss against ACC member Maryland, has allowed over 10 yards per opponent's pass attempt thus far this season. Will St. Francis have success through the air, and will the Flash be able to secure a signature victory at home? You can find out on Saturday by watching live at NEC Front Row. Now that, my friends, was one long opening drive. Now, on to our stock rising segment. We first met Duquesne's Nahari Crawford during his days as the team's primary kick returner. As a freshman in 2015, Crawford averaged 27.9 yards per kick return, including a 100-yard run back for a touchdown. 2 years later, Crawford has emerged as one of Duquesne's top targets in the passing game. The lightning-quick receiver has touchdown catches in each of the first 2 games of his junior season. And last week, he and quarterback Tommy Stewart hooked up 9 times for 138 yards and 2 scores in the 45-40 road win over Valpo. The 9 catches and the 138 receiving yards were both career highs for Crawford. Duquesne wide receiver Nahari Crawford, his stock is on the way up. A little breather never hurt nobody. Give me a Twitter timeout. While I enjoy some oxygen here on the sidelines, let's take a look at a top NEC-related tweet from this past week. It comes from Pittsburgh Tribune Review reporter Chuck Curdy. As you can see, Curdy drawing a link between the Week 2 opponents, St. Francis and Wagner, mentioning that both have alumni in the NFL. Both SFU graduate Lorenzo Jerome and former Wagner Seahawk Julian Stanford played in NFL openers this past Sunday. Jerome made his professional debut for the 49ers. As the team's third safety, he played 12 snaps on defense, also saw 2 plays on special teams. Jerome, who was sensational throughout the entire offseason, including his MVP performance in the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, well, he just became the first Red Flash alumnus in nearly 70 years to make it to the National Football League. Then there's Stanford, an NFL veteran. Playing in his 44th career NFL game, Stanford made 3 tackles in the Jets' loss to the Buffalo Bills. So just a quick shout out to Lorenzo Jerome and Julian Stanford for representing the NEC in the NFL. Hut, 4, 2, hut, Omaha, Omaha. It's time for the NEC Audible. This week, we'll take a listen to Bryant head coach James Perry. Perry's Bulldogs are prepared to play the Brown Bears in Week 3, being that the Ivy Leaguers start their season 2 weeks later than the FCS kickoff date. This one will be the opener for Brown, while Bryant comes in with 2 games played. Does that disparity make a difference? Here's what James Perry has to say.
You know, I've been on the other end of it for 10 years in a row, because I was at Brown for 3 years and then Princeton for 7. And, you know, there's like everything in life, there's pros and cons to whether you're at home or you're away. There's pros and cons to it being your first game or being at the third game. The most important thing is this is just a great opportunity. And however we can accentuate the positives, we're going to try to do, and that includes, you know, whether it's the first game or not, and minimize the negatives, we're going to try to do. And we'll certainly be faced with enough challenges on the field with what they, you know, can do.
What's amazing, you say? Stats amazing. Let's take a look at the numbers in our Stats Amazing segment. We'll focus on St. Francis receiver Cameron Lewis. Yes, you've heard his name plenty of times before on this show. The reigning NEC Offensive Player of the Year caught a 30-yard touchdown pass in the Week 2 win over Wagner. Well, you may not think that that's amazing, but this is. It was the 6th consecutive game that Lewis has had at least 1 touchdown reception. In addition, he finished with 3 catches. That makes 14 games in a row that Lewis has had at least 3 receptions in a game, dating all the way back to the 2016 season opener at Montana, where he caught 5 balls. 6 straight games with a touchdown, 14 games in a row with at least 3 catches. Now, stats amazing. And we'll wrap up the show with a Did You Know? Did you know Sacred Heart is gunning for its 9th consecutive non-conference victory. The Pioneers have won 8 non-league games in a row. It all started back on October 17th, 2015, when the Pios rolled to a 31-6 win over Cornell. Out of those 8 out-of-conference wins, 4 of them have come on the road. The Pioneers will hope to pick up a 5th consecutive non-league road win this week at Stony Brook. So there you have it, folks. It's an action-packed Week 3 docket. We gave you a lot to chew on. Now go enjoy a full Saturday of Northeast Conference football. For NEC Front Row, I'm Ralph Ventre. This is the Whole 9 Yards. See you next week.